In today's video, I'm going to break down how to produce an R&B pop chorus in the style of Sabrina Carpenter. I'm specifically going to use nonsense as an example, and I'm going to show you all the tools and techniques that you can take and apply to your own productions. So without further ado, let's jump in. Alright friends, let's dive right in and waste no time. Let's have a listen through it and then I'll break everything down step by step in detail. Saucy. Alright, so let's start off with the drums. So we have our kick drum. Very bouncy in terms of the rhythm. This is an extremely rhythmic song. And then we've got an EQ just taking out some of the low lows and a little bit of the low mids around 250. Just adding some attack, getting rid of some sustain. We just want to really tighten that kick up. We want it to punch through, especially when it's going to be competing with the 808. So we really want that click to come through so it stands out. Then we've got our first snare. And then we've got the snare layer. So we're just adding some air to that. So we're getting rid of 800, which is the fundamental, just under around 700. We're making space for that here and getting rid of the lows. And we just want to accentuate the air, and together sounds like this. So the foundation of the drums themselves in terms of the rhythm is just this. But no, friends, it doesn't just stop there. We need to fill out the subdivisions and really get this moving. And we're going to do that with percussion and hats. So we've got our main hat groove here. And what I'm doing is I'm side chaining that to the kick pretty aggressively. And what I'm also doing is I'm accentuating the downbeat. So it's harder on the downbeat and then softer. Just a little bit more humanness, a little bit more groove going on there. And I'm using the hats from the Grande sample pack. The kick and snare samples you can all see are from the Grande sample pack by Ghost Project. You can grab that on ADSR. It's about 20 bucks. And now we've got an open hi-hat. And that's from the Make Pop Music Dark Pop Pack Volume 1. And I'm just gently panning it a bit to the right. So the sample itself is a little longer, but I've just been chopping it up just so it fits really nicely with the groove. So the hats themselves together sound like this. And now what we want to do is start to add some texture and really liven up the filling in of the subdivisions. So I've got this loop that I've found from Splice and then I've chopped it up. The downbeat hits weren't aligned, so it had a slightly different accent in the rhythm. So I chopped that up so that it aligned with what I've done with the hi-hats. I've done some transient designing, just getting rid of some of the sustain. There was a bit too much room. Cleaned it up a little with EQ, got rid of some of the lows, low mids, and some of the mids. And then I'm just side chaining that with the same compression from the hi-hat. That sounds like this. Everything's a little bit more rhythmically cohesive. And then I've got this percussion loop. It's all aligned right from the get-go, which is great. It means less work for me and it's a background element. So all we're doing here is supporting the rhythm with some more textural loops. And I'm just getting rid of 6K and above, just tidying that up. It was a little bit too bright. And then I'm just using the same side chain just so that they all have the same rhythm. And finally, I've got this little ride that I printed from Arcade. Very subtle. It's just adding a sense of dimension and space. And finally, just a crash. So let's just listen to the percussion and hats. This is creating all the movement and rhythm and forward motion. All right, let's move on to the drum bus processing. So I've got an SSL compressor on there. I'm doing a slow attack, fast release, 4:1 ratio. You guys will see me do this a ton. Getting a couple dB of gain reduction. Really just emphasizing the rhythm of it. I want to accentuate the transient information, make it super punchy. Then I'm just adding some more grit to it and imperfection with Abbey Road vinyl tape emulation. I'm putting the drive in. I've got 50% drive, then a ton more warm tape and just a little bit of RC20. I wanted to use mainly the filter to get rid of some of the highs. I like how that sounds in terms of this genre of music. This is a really nice plugin to get a bit more character out of the drums. So let's listen to the drums before and after with the bus processing on them. Saucy. It just brings everything up front, makes it a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more characterful, and a little bit more imperfect, which is exactly what we're going for here. All right, let's move on to the bass. This is the second most important part of this song, particularly in genres like this, R&B. It's really the drums and bass that are the foundation of the groove. That is the bed for the vocals to sing on. So we've got a very saucy bass. So we've got this 808, almost synth. This is what the 808 sounds like on its own. And I added chorus to this because it was a little bit wider. That's it without chorus. Pushes it out to the sides. Just checked my multimeter just to make sure that everything is still in phase, totally in phase, all good. I could even push it a little bit more, but it felt right in the context of all the other layers, which I'll show you in a sec. And now we're really making it our own and adding character. So we're beefing it up with Decapitator. Got the drive up to just over 2. Darken it a little bit, and that's it. It is 100% wet, so we are distorting the whole signal. And we're just getting rid of the low lows. And here you'll see that I've done some frequency slotting with the other bass that we're going to introduce. And I will talk about that in context with the other bass. An amp designer and a limiter just to catch the peaks when it kind of goes up and down. So you can see it's catching those jumps up and down. So that it feels lovely and even. And now we have our second bass layer, and we're using this pizzicato bass preset, Symphony by Kashmir. You can grab this from Splice. If you've got like a ton of credits, you can just knock them out. I think it's about 500 credits for the whole thing. There's some really great presets in there. And we wanted something that sounds. So what I can hear in the reference is that there is a pizzicato bass, which sounds like a real bass, but there's some synthetic elements in there as well. So this is the perfect kind of preset for that. And I'm getting rid of just over 60 hertz and below. This is being occupied by both the 808 and the kick drum. And the main space that this is occupying is around 100 hertz. You can see that there. So I'm letting that breathe and getting rid of that. There isn't actually that much frequency content here anyway. So I'm slotting in the frequencies so that they work well together and they're not fighting with each other. So this is the pizzicato bass. So it's adding a lot of attack and it's accentuating all those rhythmic hits that come in with the bass. So let's talk about the bass bus processing. I've got some soft clipping going on, just catching those peaks. It's adding a little bit more grit to it, which is very much in line with the reference. A match EQ, just matching the bass from the original track. It's just always good when I'm remaking stuff to kind of get a sense for where everything is sitting tonally. And it's more so just a kind of learning tool for me. And finally, a multiband compressor, just taming some buildup that was happening on certain parts of the bass progression. So this little bit here. here again. Just want to even that out. And finally, we're just doing a little bit of a saucy trick. I'm sending this to a bus all the way, and then I'm adding Factorator, some fuzz and drive, and then I'm just blending that into taste. So it's at minus 21.5. Let's put it to 0 and have a listen. Oof. If you wanted something really aggressive and, you know, it was a song about something angry or some kind of despair or that kind of thing, that would be perfect for it. But we just want to use it to add some frequency content to make it feel a little bit more upfront. So we're just blending that in very subtly. Can just hear a little bit of fuzz and sizzle around the bass, and it's adding some definition to it, which is awesome. All right, so let's move on to the guitar. So what's really interesting about this song and this kind of style of R&B, which has heavily been influenced by the Positions album, there's a lot of country and organic elements in the production of these songs. So we've got some kind of orchestral sounds with a pizzicato bass. We've got some slide guitars. We've got some acoustic guitar. This is what gives it all of the kind of character that we associate with Sabrina Carpenter, Ariana Grande, those kinds of artists. So we have a slide guitar, which is from Arcade, the Nashville pack. So I cycled through a couple of these different playable loops, and then I just printed those to audio. This one sounds like this. And then to add some more movement in line with the reference, we've got a second slide guitar that comes in halfway through. And then there's this impact that comes in. On its own, it sounds like this. And we really want it to feel like a kind of long trailing impact. So I've got replica on there. I've got it mixed quite wet with quite a long feedback. And then just a little bit of EQ afterwards, just to clean up some of the lows and low mids, and a little bit of a resonance at 2.5K. So it just sets it back and gives it that long tail. So the slide guitars sound like this. So it's kind of this lush bed of drones that are keeping everything legato against everything else that is extremely rhythmic. So next we have some electric guitar. So we've just got these little guitar melodies coming in and out throughout the arrangement. It's just me playing on my guitar. It's just straight DI into my Apollo Twin. And this is what's going on. We've got some compression, run it through a Chicago amp. There was a little bit more grit to it. Bass Invader, this cabinet, a little more compression in parallel, some EQ just to shape the tone, and some ice verb to give it a little bit more atmosphere. And then we've just got this little guitar chop here that I found on Splice. It's not exactly the same as the reference, but it felt aligned with it in terms of everything that's going on with the guitars themselves. So let's listen to the bass, slide guitar and guitar licks to give you a sense of the contrast between the rhythm and these legato elements, and then these little bits coming in and out. So it's just accentuating those little chord changes with the melody and creating some movement. So finally, we've got our synths and atmos. So we've got this ARP. Just a guitar ARP. I've pitched it up an octave, added some H delay to it, and just darkening it a little bit, giving it a sense that it's further back in the mix. And then we've got some guitar candy, which really brings everything to life. I'm using Twilight Glow. just really bringing some life to it. It's really dynamic. There's bits coming in and out. For that reason, I love how dynamic it is, but in the context of this style of music, we don't want everything to be super dynamic. We want to tame those very dynamic parts. So I'm just using a limiter just to catch those parts. Just making everything a little smoother dynamically. Then we've got an acoustic guitar. I don't have an acoustic guitar, as you guys know. So I'm doing a little bit of cheating using the strummed acoustic. So we're just holding down those chords. For reference, the chords that we've got playing are D flat major 7th, C, F minor 7, F7 sus4, and A flat add 9. So we're using those 7ths and add 9s to really paint that R&B flavor in terms of the harmonic content. And then we just have a pad from Contact, Melted Vibes. Perfect for this genre. Doing a little bit of EQ just to shape the tone, and a little bit of soothe just to soothe out the mids. So it's just creating that lush bed for the rest of the chords to kind of sit on. And finally, got this little vocal hit coming in. I've pitched it down a little, put it on double speed. And that just comes in every so often. So let's have a listen to the synths and atmos and listen to how the ebb and flow of all these different elements are working together. So it's creating that really lush bed. It's gluing everything together in what would otherwise be a pretty minimal track. And on the synths and atmos bass, I've just got some soothes. And that's it, my friends. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you want to see how I reproduced Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish, click the video right here. And until next time, create courageously.